Hello, everybody. Greetings to all. Welcome to the Snooker Hall Podcast. I'm Dan Murren. A week after the final of the World Championship in Sheffield, I think it's fair to say that the dust has started to settle. I know that I'm strangely still trying to process what I saw in the Crucible Theatre that weekend. One of the greatest finals in the history of the sport. It was an honour to be there to see the story unfold frame by frame. Twists and turns from beginning to end. However, the final is only a part of what made the 2026 edition of the World Championship so memorable. Snooker fans were treated to brilliant snooker for 17 days, and now that we've had some time to contemplate on what went down in Sheffield, it's time to debrief. To help with this task, I have enlisted the help of one of snooker's most recognisable voices, a former player who competed at the highest level, including 12 appearances at the Crucible and a ranking event victory. He is now an esteemed analyst and commentator. His guest spot on the podcast last year was one of the most popular episodes of the year, and being a firm believer in the mantra, give the people what they want, I've asked him back this year, and I'm happy to say that he has accepted the invitation. It's a pleasure to welcome Neal Foulds back to the Snooker Hall Podcast. Neal, how are you?
Very good, Dan. How are you keeping? All right? You've, as you say, we've had a bit of time to get over the championship, which was good. I mean, I've only just arrived back from Sheffield because up there for the World Seniors, but it's a slightly different week. But yeah, it was a great championship, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought it was superb, actually. One of the best I can think of, you know.
Absolutely. There are so many positive talking points to take from that tournament, from those, I was going to say 2 weeks, from those 17 days. It's difficult to know where to begin, really. But I have to ask, from the commentator's point of view, how long were you there in Sheffield as a commentator?
To be honest, we the first 12 days we were in London, it seems to be the case on TNT. Obviously, there's two tables, and you know as well as I do, there's not a lot of room at the Crucible, or else we'd be there for the lot. But when it goes down to the one table, we all come up after the quarterfinals from London and use the second commentary box, which is, you know, probably the boost we all need, actually. There's myself, Dominic, Joe. Dominic doesn't come up, but then you've got Phil Yates also doesn't come up, but then you've got Philip Studd and Dave Hendon, myself and Joe basically at the venue. So the other two do their first 12 days. And, you know, they're long days because we did the qualifiers as well. So it's the kind of boost you need to be actually in there watching those semi-finals. A very privileged position to be in a commentary box, you know, overlooking the table, especially this year, because as we're sort of getting to the point, it was one of the great championships. So, you know, we were there for the last bit, and like I said, I've been up there for a few days since then. But I'm back now, and the season is pretty much over, isn't it? Except for a few things here or there.
So we've got Q School coming up, but this has been a pretty intense time of year for the commentary teams. So you've had the Tour Championship, then the qualifiers, then the tournament itself, and you've been up there for the seniors as well. So that's what, 5, 6, 7 weeks non-stop?
Yes, I mean, I haven't had a break really for a while, but as I say, I'm not going to complain, because if I don't want to do it, someone else will.
That's true.
And it's all work. And you know what? There's much more strenuous ways to earn a living, aren't there, than working on snooker?
Yeah, talking about snookers.
It was a fabulous championship. You know, I mean, it was very dramatic, I thought, the longer it went on. And I think with snooker, there's nothing quite like snooker, when drama comes in. I mean, I think I remember Colin Murray, who used to work on the snooker, saying something to me, and he was right. He's got a passing interest in the game. He's a good presenter, and he said, you know, snooker sometimes isn't very exciting, which is true. It's possibly at times less exciting than many other sports, but when the drama kicks in, it's right up there with anything. It's as good as anything in sport. And he's right. You know, you've got mundane matches. You've got mundane football matches where they finish 0-0, haven't you? You've got all this sort of stuff. You know, so, yeah, I mean, the drama was absolutely off the scale, I thought.
And the drama kind of seeped from the table into the arena and into the outside world. I say the outside world, the social media world, the media world. There were some big talking points, even from the early rounds. The one that really caught fire was the Kyron Wilson-Stan Moody match. I think we'll come on to the celebration police in a minute, whether they're justified or whether they're not justified. But I think the reason it was such a big talking point is because Stan played really well for the first half of the match. And had he not played well, then the celebration wouldn't have been necessary, you'd feel. But in terms of the debutants, I think they all can take a lot of positives from that first appearance at the Crucible. It's a big step in a player's career. Like your first time at the Crucible, how did you feel?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's right. It's not easy when you go there for the first time because if you're a qualifier, you're playing a seeded player. And many great players have lost on their first appearance there. Mercifully, I managed to win my first ever match there. But the fact is, it's a pretty. It's become even more. I think even if you go back to when I was playing, the Crucible was fairly new. I mean, it had only been going. Thinking about it now, I think it was about 8 years. So the Crucible, it'd be like going to a venue where it's relatively new. I was going to say the Ali Pali, but that's been going longer than that anyway. But it's pretty much fairly daunting, and it's become almost like a hallowed turf, a bit like going to Lord's cricket ground and playing at Lord's for the first time if you're a cricketer. It's you see it as sort of iconic being there. But the debutants did, in answer to what you were saying, the debutants did well. I mean, I think even Anthony Kowalski, I thought he played some good stuff, as did Liam Pullen. But there's no doubt that, as we were speaking about Stan Moody, the way he started that match, he was just pretty sensational, actually. I think sometimes it can be lost on you looking back. He lost the match, we know all that. But he was unplayable for the first few frames. He was unplayable. He looked just absolutely inspired playing there. As the match went on, Karan battled hard and he ended up getting the win. And it was a very contrasting match for Stan because he started brilliantly and he didn't end very well. He lost a bad frame where Karan needed snookers and they weren't that difficult to hit. And I think he just lost his way thinking, well, I'm not going to lose this frame. And he was his mind wandered. And the next thing you know, he has lost it. And there was probably no way back for him. And then the wheels fell off, quite honestly. But, if you're Stan Moody or Stan Moody's, camp, his family or friends or coach, whatever, you have to take, to use a cliche, you have to take the positives. And the positives were, he's an absolute handful as a player. And there's lots to learn at his age, of course, as a teenager. And, with the right guidance, you'd expect him to be a major force in the game. You think about Stephen Hendry, lost there on debut, and the next year came back and beat the man who beat him, Willie Thorne. He lost to him the first year gallantly. So what do? You go away and you come back better. That's what youngsters have to do.
Yeah, in terms of learning points, it's easy for me to say it from the comfort of my sofa, but Stan's words after the match, I think honestly he's a young guy, he's just lost in his Crucible debut. We can give him a little bit of slack, but not 100% slack. But when he said at 8-3 the match would have been over, I was like, that's a dangerous attitude. Like, you're playing a guy who's just won the Masters a few months ago. He's a former world champion. He's no mug. But to say at 8-3 the match is over, that led into the complacency, and he, as you said, he really shouldn't be missing those snookers, especially all of them. And maybe he saw the finish line and took his foot off the gas. But it's Kyron Wilson. He's a good player. Can't do that.
No, he's a top player, and I mean, I don't know. 8-3 is a pretty substantial lead if you get there, and whether he meant it quite like that, I don't know. But 8-3, I think I'd have wanted to be with him rather than Kyron Wilson. But I take your point, and there was the frame that he lost on the respot, wasn't it? And I think that was actually the frame, wasn't it, you're speaking about? He was 7-3 up, and then he lost the frame 35 in front on the last red. He tried to roll the red down the cushion, didn't get near it, and then lost it on a respot. So to be 8-3 up, he kind of would have broken the back of the match, really. And then, of course, he lost that horrible frame where all the snookers were needed, where he made a 68 break. I'm just looking at the stats for that match now. And in the end, his game fell to pieces. But many a player has had that. I mean, his first match at the Crucible can encapsulate some people's entire career there. You've got great highs and great lows over a career at the Crucible. He seemed to have them all in the same match, But, yeah, I mean, he's playing a top player. But as I say, you've got to look at how well he played early and go from there and say, look, it was a pretty good debut for the most part, I think, against Kyron, who was champion a couple of years ago.
Yeah. No, he could have had an easier draw, even from the seeded players, we'll say. But for me, the biggest breath of fresh air, that's the term I used, but he was a delight to watch, was Liam Pullen. You can see the differences in styles. Stan's potting was fearless. It was, not, I would say, bordering on the recklessness of youth, but he was just going for everything, and a lot of them he was getting. But Liam, I don't know, I just love the way Liam plays. He's so focused, he's so methodical, and methodical is often used as a negative word, and I don't really think it should be, especially for a young player. But he just seems so mature, he seems so focused, so determined, and he's actually talented as well, which obviously helps a little bit. But he's got a bright future in this game, I think. He's got more or less all the attributes, not just the technical attributes. He's got the mental attributes as well, from what I can see.
What I see in young players, and this goes back many years, you've got basically two types of talented player. One is your Stan Moody's, who's clearly a very gifted player with a nice cue action. And you've got Liam, who I would say probably hasn't quite got the natural gift of Stan. But he is, because he knows he has to work a little bit harder, he could go further in the game. Because sometimes, the gifted players, I don't mean Stan because I think he'll go to the top, but I've seen it before where gifted players, well, it only takes you so far, that talent. You've got to have some mental fortitude. You've got to have the desire. Whereas I think Liam Pullen seems to have that. And, he sort of eased his way into the match. He missed a few. I mean, I think I did both sessions of that match. I thoroughly enjoyed it. He made some couple of breaks that should have been centuries. It got back to 5-all. Game was on then. In the end, I thought Wakelin played well to beat him, and then he made his century at the Crucible on debut just before the match come to an end. Looked like he was loving it. He will learn from that experience. I agree that he's a good player. He's beaten John Higgins already in a ranking event, don't forget. So
Yep,
he's got the results. He's a bit of a Mark Selby, a young Mark Selby, isn't he? I think you can see that in his cue action, in his approach, and of course Mark Selby. If he does half of what Mark Selby's done in the game, he'll be a great player. So yeah, I liked what Pullen brought to the table. Different style to Stan Moody. They two grew up together, I think, and I know they did, but yeah, I mean, of the seeded players, there might have been an argument that Chris Wakelin, you could add a really powerhouse seed, and a Sullivan or a Trump. In Wakelin, you had someone that did well there last year, beaten Mark Allen and Neil Robertson last year. So yeah, Liam Pullen's going to be absolutely fine. I've got no doubt about that. I see him going a long way in the game. I just feel that he'll always keep his feet on the ground. I don't know him, but that's the feeling I get. He'll just progress. He seems to be an engaging youngster. So yeah, I heard nothing behind the scenes, but people telling me what a lovely lad he was. With that sort of inner resolve as well. So he's got all the ingredients to go far.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on this podcast before, and he was professional, he was polite, but you could see the determination in when he was speaking about what he could achieve in the game. And other players I've spoken to have again said, and it sounds patronising because he's still, he's a nice lad. And, that helps for public image and all that sort of thing. But as long as he's not nice when he gets on the table, then that's the main thing. He has to be horrible on the table, yeah.
No, I like him. I think he's got things that, and also you say that, and of course no one really wants anyone to not be a pleasant individual, but you do get people on your side if you've got good manners and you're you're cooperative in everything. So as I say, I'm not comparing him to anyone else because I thought all the youngsters seem to be all in the same category this year. But yeah, he's a good lad. You just feel that he's got a good big future in the game, and you never quite know what the future will offer. Because the game is not so easy that you can be sure of anything. But yeah, both of those two did well.
And I was going to make a little sarcastic comment. Another youngster, John Higgins. I got to say, he did all right. He did far better than most were expecting, I'd say. To make the semi-final setup is one thing, but I was thinking about it during the last episode, and over the past few years, he's delivered some classics at the Crucible. The match against Mark Allen 2 years ago went to a deciding frame, classic. 2 matches last year, I would say. The match against Zhou Guodong, 13-11, and then obviously the match against Mark Williams got a bit more attention. Honestly, I prefer the Zhou Guodong match, personally. But again, this year against Ronnie O'Sullivan, that's another classic he's put on for the Crucible punters. He's Mark Allen said at the English Open that he's provided good value for money. But I'd say John Higgins is rivaling him for this. Because his matches are fun to watch.
Well, they are. The thing about Higgins this year, which I don't know if it's kind of slightly went unnoticed, but he lost the first session in all of his first 3 matches. Now, when you think about that, the first match is a 2-session match. He was 5-4 down to Ali Carter. He lost 5 in a row. So he lost the first session against Carter. He lost the first session against O'Sullivan, and he lost the first session against Neil Robertson. And he won all those matches, and he was actually 3-1 down in his semi-final against Sean Murphy before he actually ended up level at 4-all. So the point I'm making is that can't have happened very often in the past. I know that the year that Luca won it, he was behind in a lot of his matches, but so John never really got started well. He never had an easy match there. You know, if you keep losing the first session, you're not getting easy matches, are you? So, you know, his battling qualities certainly shone through all the way through that. And, you know, it might just be that, and I've said this before, and I'm not the only one to say it, it might just be now that for Mark or John or Ronnie, the class of 92, they're still as good as ever, but that just ability to you know, get to the one table and improve, it may be a bit beyond them now. It just could be that, you know, on that basis, age is starting to catch up when it comes to winning the thing again. You know, they're going to be a force, but given the ages of the most recent winners of the championship, then, you know, you could argue that they're going to find it hard to win it again, any of those guys. But they're always going to be, they're the sort of guys, they can beat anybody in it, but as far as them winning it, I'm not too sure. They can stop others from winning it.
Well, yeah, they could be kingmakers without being the king themselves, yeah. It's, well, I thought about this. In the second round, we had exits for Kyron Wilson, Judd Trump, Mark Williams, Mark Selby, and Ronnie O'Sullivan. That's a lot of experience. They're all former champions, of course, but that's a lot of talent and that's a lot of years at the Crucible gone in the second round. And we did have a wave of people who had never been there before. So Uyiza, Hussein Fafai had never been to the quarterfinal stage before. I think this is kind of a good sign. Zhao Xintong had only been there once before. Okay, he is a former champion, so we'll maybe can't include him in that list. But I'm always pleased in a way when some of the veterans lose to the youngsters, because it means, yeah, there is a future in the game. They're not scared of these guys. And we will see the next generation. And it's not that I want to see them lose, but I just want to see the youngsters win. And I suppose my hypocrisy, we'll come on to that in a minute, is I kind of wanted Sean Murphy to win the final. But never let hypocrisy get in the way of your logic. That's what I always say. The two who I really did fancy to have a good tournament, I did think Judd would do a lot better. And I thought Neil Robertson would really, really challenge. I'm surprised he lost to John Higgins, if I'm honest. Especially given the start he had.
Yeah, I mean, in round 2, you had a funny, sort of a lopsided nature of the draw. You had 4 champions or former champions in the top half, you know, Zhao Xintong, Sean Murphy, John Higgins, Neil Robertson, all winning. So you know that there's going to be a former champion in the final. In the bottom half, the 4 winners were Mark Allen, never won it. Barry Hawkins beaten in the final. Ruiz, who had never won a match there, and Hossein, who had done very little there. So it was kind of an interesting sort of balance, wasn't it, of top half of the draw, bottom half of the draw. You know, the irony is the winner actually came out of the bottom half of the draw. So that's what we like, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, a lot of the guys got beat. Mark Williams, I think, was a bit disappointing this year for him. Mark Selby, well, he looked great. I mean, I did all of his match with Ruiza. And he made back-to-back total clearance in the first 2 frames. Selby looked amazing. And then, you know, then his game started to not so much fall to pieces, but he certainly didn't like being attacked in the way that Ruiza did. And then, of course, you saw the frustration spill over when he did everything but snap his cue. I don't know how that cue is still in one piece. Well, I'm assuming it is still in one piece, but because the championship's over now. But he nearly that nearly snapped. And if you could say, right, okay, at the championship this year, somebody actually snapped their cue at the table, and it's never happened before. We're not going to tell you who it was. Mark Selby's going to be quite low on that list of
Oh,
candidates,
the
isn't he?
odds on that are astronomical, yeah.
I know.
Because he's so
I mean, I'm
nice.
not going to say who you might have thought it would be, but it's not likely to be Mark Selby. And he didn't. And of course, what he did by that is, I mean, people say, well, it takes all the frustration. I mean, Ronnie always says, oh, it takes the frustration out of you. But what it really does, in my opinion, is it gives your opponent a real boost. You think, wow, I've really got him on the ropes here because he nearly snapped his cue there. Very interesting match that Uguza won, against him. So, yeah, and of course I didn't commentate on the Hossein match with Judd at all, I don't think, but I did see it all, and I don't know, Judd seems to have hit a bit of a wall, doesn't he, in these days at the Crucible. I know he's been in finals and since he's been champion. Don't get me wrong, I think he's a great player, but I don't know, I'm not sure if he really enjoys playing there that much. It seems to me.
Well, what was it? Second round this year. He made the semis last year, and it was a good match against Mark Williams.
Yes.
On another day, maybe he might have made the final. But people will say that Neil Robertson has a mental block there. I don't know if it's really true. Only he will ever know, of course. But to say that Judd Trump has underachieved at the Crucible, I don't think it's unfair. Given what he's done elsewhere.
When Neil won it, right, in 2010, everyone assumed he'd win more than one. And now here we are 16 years later, he's still only won the one, Neil Robertson. Some people have said to me the draw went in his favour that year. He didn't meet many top players during the course of it. But Neil's been a leading player in the game for many, many years now. As far as Judd is concerned, when he won the title, 7 years ago now, I would have been surprised to think he still hasn't won it again because he looked to be the dominant force in the game. He's not really the dominant force in the game anymore, despite being world number one. But his his ranking in the world number one is going to disappear anyway because the Saudi points are going to come off, and of course they're not going to go back on because Saudi's gone. So, I think Jin Tong will end up in front of him, but he's still a top player. You would have expected him to be Hossein Vafai, but he did play well at the end of that match, especially when the pressure came on, and no one would have begrudged Hossein that win. Because the kind of difficulties he experienced in the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's what you said earlier. You never know what's happening off the table. These players are not robots; they're humans. Right? It's we gotta just quickly talk about something before we hit the semi-finals and the final. So I've got to say, my experience in the arena, I was only there for the final. That's it. But my experience in the arena was fantastic. The atmosphere was incredible. The only complaint I would have is, it's like everyone has been talking about, the phones. I just found it amazing that after someone was actually removed from the arena, suddenly there were no more phones going off. And it turns out that if there is a consequence for your actions, no one else does it. It's amazing that, isn't it? It's, but...
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, some players seem more equipped to deal with it than others. I thought Sean Murphy was getting quite angry about the phones. And I noticed Rob Spencer, the referee for that final, he, at the start of either a session or, he had that he held court and said anyone whose phone goes off would be thrown out. I mean, I personally wouldn't like to see that because you don't know under what circumstances they've got that ticket. I don't get quite as angry about it because you just don't know the circumstance. It could be someone that's always wanted to go there, not great on mobiles, and their alarm might have went off. I'm not saying it's right, but I don't think you can get so angry as all that about it. I think you've got to try and cope with it a little bit better because I know that there was one occasion when Sean missed the ball with the rest early in that final, and there was the tiniest bleeping sound. I don't even know what it was. It didn't sound like a mobile phone. It sounded like a pager or something, which I don't even know if people have those anymore. But it was the tiniest little beep, and he was on the shot, and it did put him off. But I don't know. Surely, you could play through that. I mean, I just don't like the idea of throwing people out. Someone could have, been given a ticket last year, completely law-abiding citizen, by a family member, and all of a sudden they're thrown out of the Crucible as if they're like, as bad as the people that trying to jump into the arena. But it's an unfortunate situation. I don't have the answers really. I don't think you can stop people taking their phones in. Maybe you could have someone, if you really want to do it, right? And I don't even think has to be done. But if you really want to do this, maybe as people go in, their phone should be looked at, and it should be right. Okay, do you realise that you've got an alarm on this phone? Do you realise that you've only got it on? No one can ring you, and the alerts will still go. Do you maybe to have a look at people's phone, elderly people's phones, for instance, who don't really know how to use them, because not everyone is 21 years of age and knows how to completely deactivate their phone. And it just seems a shame that someone got thrown out for it, really. Having said that, I wouldn't have wanted on my sort of like on a big shot to be put off by that kind of thing, So it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one, that's for sure. And I don't think you're ever going to get rid of it. I do think that the one time, if you could pick a frame in a match where the phones go off most, it's usually frame 5. And that's because they were told at the start, phones off, and then, of course, they go for their mid-session interval drink, have a look at their phones, turn them on again or whatever it is. I mean, and then they've just forgotten. So frame 5 is usually the killer for the phones.
Yeah. No, do you know what? It makes sense. It is logical. But from the players, like John Higgins was another one you could see was just getting a little bit irked by it. And I get when you're under so much pressure in that arena anyway, it's just any kind of distraction probably just amplifies times 100, doesn't it? It's
I think if you could get people to make their phones silent rather than turn them off, because like I say, when people turn them off, they just turn them off from on the normal tone, and then when they turn them on, they just forget to do it. It's a bit of a nightmare. I don't really have any answers, and none of us do. It didn't offend me in the same way it offends some, put it that way. Even though I don't like to hear them going off.
Now, I was a little bit offended by something which I didn't hear, but someone told me about. Now, I'm not a massive fan of abbreviating the Crucible to the Cruce.
All right, yeah.
Somebody told me that Rob Walker, I think he's gone too far with this one. He referred to the Crucible as the Cruci B.
Okay. I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear it, but if that is the case, I don't like that one.
Send him to the gallows.
Send him to.
No, listen, Rob. Listen, let me tell you about Rob. Right? Okay, he's got to warm everyone up before the game. That guy does an amazing job, and he was even at the seniors last week. Not as high profile. I mean, I enjoyed the seniors, but he puts in a shift. Right? It could be a Crucible Tuesday morning session where you've got no big names. You've got a couple, maybe one match only in the arena, but he is very good, at warming up the crowd. And when he introduces all the players, he knows that some people in that room have never been to the Crucible before, and it's their first experience. And he never ever. He never has a quiet one. He just said, well, he's always up for everything, and. I'm going to give him a pass. I mean, I didn't hear him say that. I don't even really understand that Cruise TB. Doesn't make any sense. But, yeah. The Cruise, I'm not as offended by stuff as other people, but yeah, it's not the Cruise, it's the Crucible. Yeah, there's no point in abbreviating that one.
Yeah. I said to Chris Downer on a recent episode that maybe Rob's part of a big conspiracy to devalue the Crucible, so when it does move, people won't care. Oh, it's not the Crucible, it's just the Cruise, who cares? But I think that was a little bit far-fetched. Yeah, a little bit far-fetched. Dave Hendon said on his podcast recently that the longest frame would quickly be forgotten, and it was kind of a mountain being made out of a molehill. And do you know what? He was right, because there were much more significant talking points in those semi-finals, apart from that one frame. I don't think people will remember that frame. Okay, it will be in the almanac, fine, but was it really that significant? Okay, every frame counts, I know, but given what happened in that match, no one's going to be talking about the longest frame.
No, not really. But what I would say is that it attracted a lot of interest, that frame. You'd be amazed, sort of the passing snooker fan or someone that just watches the one tournament a year would have found that interesting in the same way that John Isner Mahut match at Wimbledon went on for 3 days, the match that went on. And as far as a spectacle, that match probably wasn't one. But it just, it got people interested. And that frame, I was in commentary for it. It was an amazing session of snooker because in the first session, Ruiza had really taken the match, to Mark Allen. He looked absolutely brilliant. And he led 6-2. And Mark Allen battled back. And there was an hour-long frame, which Mark Allen won despite a 51 break from Ruiza. There was an hour and 40-minute frame. In between that, Mark Allen made a 1-4-5 break. It was an amazing session of snooker. And what all that happened in that frame was the black was over the pocket. And well, I think everyone knows what happened. But the reds that were kind of absolutely tightly grouped around the black, none of them were actually going to plant the black in. It was kind of odd, really, though you couldn't see how it could come to an end unless someone intervened. And I think Marcel Eckhart, who I think is a very good referee, I think at some point somebody shouted out, "How about a re-rack, ref?" And of course he didn't take kindly to that because he's the official, not the person in the crowd. I think he was almost more determined not to take the guy's advice as a consequence of being told what to do, you know. But listen, if you like proper sport, I was on that session and I thought it was a classic session because Mark Allen played some of the best safety I've ever seen in that match. He made things incredibly difficult. You saw what User was capable of because he became world champion. But ultimately, the long frame and that ridiculously long session meant very little because it was pretty heartbreaking stuff for Mark Allen at the end, wasn't it? Let's be honest, the last couple of frames, what happened in those frames, it was just mind-boggling at times. I mean, I was, when he missed the black, now bearing in mind I'm working for TNT, I knew that in the next commentary box, the BBC commentators are in there. So we don't really ever go in there and they don't ever come in our booth now because it's, two completely separate organisations. When he missed that black and lost the frame, I couldn't help it. I had to go in and speak to Joe Perry and Dennis Taylor. I said, "What have we just seen?" And Dennis could hardly speak. Joe couldn't believe it either. So, it was just such a talking point at the end of that match when he missed that black. All of the effort that went into that match came down to that shot. And there were a couple of signs because Mark Allen had been brilliant in the match, but in that frame, he'd missed a couple. Just started to doubt himself a tiny bit right as the winning line was there to be crossed. And even the decider, he got in first. It was an amazing game of snooker. That it's one of the great Crucible matches, I think. The final was great too, but that had everything that Wu is a match with Mark Allen, in my opinion. It had big breaks, it had long frames, it had drama, it had everything.
Well, yeah, and that's what you want in a match. If you can have pot fests, you can have a long safety drawn out safety battle, but if you get a mixture, then it's kind of like a bit of fun for everybody. And I know what you mean about those reds. They were so tightly packed, but the black wasn't actually really just hanging over the pocket.
To be threatened, was it? Yeah, there was no threat of it going in. Yeah, it was an odd one.
It is, but how often does that happen, really? And
very rarely.
I suppose, was that a worse miss? Okay, in terms of impact, no, it wasn't as bad a missed black as the final, the penultimate frame. But
I think Mark Allen had to. If you think about the importance of that frame, Mark Allen has won all of the frames in that session, right? He's come from 6-2 down to 7-6 up. They've only played 5 frames when they should play 8. So that was at the end of the session. And they'd already said that if there's to be a re-rack here, we can't even have the re-rack today. It would have been at the start of the next session. So that's a new one. So 5 frames in a session would have been extraordinarily long, a lot of time for not many frames. But there was no slow play in it. It was just brilliant safety. And, in the end, he made the decision to knock the black in deliberately, which cost him. I think Mark had no choice. He didn't want to re-rack. He was quite a long way in front, about 40 points, I think, which is a lot, really. Whether you change the rule and you say, right, okay, we re-rack the balls with, the original scores left on, that's one way around it. But and the fact that Ruiza won it, when you think about all of the things in that whole championship, Ruiza won it, but he could have come unstuck on a number of occasions,
And I think, okay, we'll come on to Wu, but sometimes you just need the stars to align for you, right? And if
Yeah,
it happens, it happens, and it certainly did for Wu. And even just in that frame, 9 times out of 10, Mark is potting that black anyway, and the reds don't congregate around the corner.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but then, yeah, I suppose you could say that missed black eventually did an hour later, or an hour and a bit later, cost him the frame. It's
Strangely enough, when he missed the black originally, he left it over the right corner when he was on a break of around 30. I can't remember exactly what it was. He played it a little. He kind of played it gently, as if he was hoping to block the pocket anyway in potting the black. And really, the black was quite easy. So he slightly brought it on himself. But I'm not going to be critical of Mark Allen, because Mark Allen played the match of his life there, I think. He fought all the way. He's missed a 1 in 100 black, and he took it like a man. He absolutely superb at the end, despite how he must have been feeling. So
yeah,
Mark Allen came out of that match with nothing but good, in my opinion.
no, absolutely. I've always found Mark Allen to be professional. He's so competitive, and it must have been so hard for him in that moment. Even as a professional player, can you think of a moment which would have been so difficult? Okay, losing
Well,
matches is never easy, of course, but
no, okay. Well, obviously, the '85 final with Davis missing the black, but I do remember 2 years ago when he lost to John Higgins, when he made a large break in that frame, 60 odd, and
yeah,
and then in the end, John Higgins took on a double, and in clearing up to beat him. And the double, if it doesn't go in, and it wasn't a simple double, it was kind of a back double to right middle. He would definitely have lost. And then, of course, the double goes and he clears. And he was very, very gracious then as well. So now Mark Allen's had two pretty crushing defeats at the Crucible. That, to my knowledge, he's probably had more than two. Two pretty crushing defeats. Whether he'll ever be able to come back and win it now, I don't know. And if ever he did, no one would deserve it more.
yeah, he's done his time. You say, and he's earned the scars. You would say,
Yeah.
but it's got to be so hard, even in the short term, maybe even the long term, to overcome a blow like that. It's a body blow, absolutely, because he has said that if he doesn't win the World Championship, he will consider his career a failure. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, the last thing I'll say about Mark Allen, right, is that what he could take out of that championship is that he's got his game back and he can win it, because, his safety is impeccable. He's a consummate match player, but he's had a couple of horrible experiences there. And of course, you go back there in a year's time and it all comes flooding back, the mental scars. So I would be surprised if he won it. But in a way, you'd have to almost root for him now, because that was a tough one.
and the other semi-final was, well, not quite a 17-16, but almost 17-16. John Higgins, will he see that as a missed opportunity to make another final? He played well.
He played really well. Yeah, I think in the end, Sean Murphy probably he just was really good, wasn't he? Murphy played brilliantly in that whole championship, and in the end, he almost had a little bit too much firepower for John. You John was playing well, but like I say, he never had an easy match in that championship. Every match, say even against Ali Carter, he lost the first session. So, he's always battling, always coming from behind. He never quite had it in him to sort of like stride away from any player. And in the end, it just caught up with him. Murphy was good. He was dangerous. He was scoring in big numbers, and he just had too much for him. I don't think there's any fluke about that scoreline. I felt that Murphy was the better player, but John Higgins just proved he still got it. But I've said this already, and it's not anything against John, because he's been a great champion. But he's another one. I mean, you look at the ages of the last four winners. Can a 50-plus player ever be world champion again? And despite the brilliance of the class of '92, I'm starting to think no. I just don't think they can win it now. I think they can go deep without winning it, and that match fitted into that category again for me.
And you consider Sean Murphy now, well, he is one of the more senior players on the tour, without question. When it came to that final, okay, it's a clash of generations, but it's also a little bit of I know both players are quite attacking, but I would actually consider it a clash of styles as well. And okay, Wu won out in the end. It was one of the greatest finals the Crucible has ever seen, surely. But it's starting to feel like Sean Murphy's destined not to win that second Crucible crown, unfortunately
Maybe.
for him.
Maybe. I mean, he got very. I mean, again. I mean, Rui is winning that title. I mean, the Mark Allen match was extraordinary. Even the Mark Selwyn match he could have lost. But that final. I mean, you mentioned the stars aligning, and they really did for Rui Izzo. I mean, I'm delighted that he's won it. By the way, I couldn't be happier. I was in the same position as my colleague Dave Hendon for that final. I didn't mind who won. You know, if Sean Murphy won, he's gone 21 years between his first and second title. That's a long time for someone who still plays the game like a youngster. Um, but Rui Izzo, it just seemed it was meant to win it. And I still believe that what might have helped Rui Izzo is that he saw Xiao Jintong win it last year. If Jintong hadn't have won last year, then it's very possible Rui Izzo would have thought it's so big what I'm doing here, becoming the first Chinese player ever to win, that it's just too much for me. But because he saw Jintong do it last year, he realised it could be done. So all of those big moments, he was up for them. And, you know, in that last frame, you know, he made the most extraordinary 85 break. Murphy was in first. People forget that. Murphy got in first, and he hadn't been missing getting in first. He got in first and broke down very quickly, and it was a chance. He made a mistake in position, and then the 85 break, which started off with that red to middle, left middle, was just the most sensational shot. If he misses it, he loses. You know, and you're talking fine margins in, you know, Mark Allen not making a world final and Murphy not winning the final itself. To say that they can't win it again, those two, it'd be mad, because what you saw from Allen, what you saw from Murphy, is that they are so close there that you could never write them off again. But it's, you know, to climb the mountain again next year and go through it all again, you could get beaten in the first round. Anything could happen. It was a great final. I think it's the best I've seen, and that would include the Mark Williams John Higgins match, which everyone speaks about. You know, when Williams won his third, that was a great game. But I just thought that final, the fact that it went all the way, had everything. It was an incredible game of snooker for me, and it was so nerve-wracking being in commentary at the end. You know, so nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I was so impressed with how Wu handled the occasion. I'm always loath to compare players with previous generations, but he's been compared with Paul Hunter, with Ronnie O'Sullivan, with Steve Davis. If I had to, I would say Neil Robertson personally, because the long putting is so good. But when he's in the balls, he doesn't miss. The cue ball control was immaculate. Under such pressure, he held his nerve so well. But I've had a week to think about this. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you find Wu exciting to watch, or is he just impressive? And do you think people conflate the two?
No, I find him exciting. I like his game. I think I think his long game is brilliant. I like his style. I do find him exciting to watch. Is the answer to your question? I'll tell you what he does. Something, and I pointed this out at the start of the championship. When players are playing long shots, and Sean Murphy's one of these that's admitted this. They don't like the shot to be straight. If they've got the cue ball in the D, for instance, after an in-off, and they've got a long pot, they like to put a slight angle on the ball they're trying to pot, because they don't really. There's something about a straight shot that players don't like. Rui Izzo, he loves a straight shot. If he's got a long ball, he'll put the cue ball in a certain place where it's absolutely straight. And I said to Phil Yates, I said, you do realise this fella never misses a straight ball. And I don't think I've seen him miss one. And they're meant to be the easiest, but they're not the easiest, because they do actually put your cue action under a lot of pressure when they're dead straight. Because if you miss a straight one, you think, well, what have I done wrong here? But he's got the straightest cue action. You know, he's an amazing player, and I'm one that wants the game to move forward. You know, even though I've been involved in the game a long time, I like that. I like what happened. I like Wu Yi's winning. I've got no problem with overseas players winning 2 years in a row. We know that the Chinese are going to end up dominating the game in years to come. You know, in 10 years' time, what will the top 16 look like? 12 Chinese? Well, great. I think they deserve it. So I've got no problem with that. And, you know, to see a 22-year-old world champion, that's got to be good for the game worldwide.
Well, the reason I ask about whether you find him impressive or exciting or both is because I do think there can be a difference between the two. I was speaking with a friend of mine and he kind of compared Wu Yiz's long putting to, and this is a strange comparison, but he compared Wu Yiz's long putting to the golfers who spend loads of time in the gym, and maybe they're not technically as good as the truly elite golfers, but in terms of physicality, they can just blast the ball just that little bit further along the fairway. So their approach shots are easier, and therefore they're likely to get closer to the hole. And there's a reason that fairway drive distance is a metric in golf, because it can make a difference. I can't drive a ball. When I'm playing golf, my approach play is not too bad. My putting is average at best, but my driving is terrible. So therefore, I will never be a professional golfer, and that's why I'm not a professional golfer. And I kind of get that, but I don't agree with it. I understand the logic, but I don't agree with the logic. And my cynicism aside, Wu is so impressive. And him winning the championship, despite me wanting Sean Murphy to become champion again, Wu winning is so positive for snooker. And it's not just that we have a new champion, a new player at the top of the game, a new breakout star. His style suggests that we will see an evolution in the sport, the next step. When Wu's playing, nothing is safe. But that's with every sport. Sports evolve, tactics change, players adapt. Opponents will have that little bit extra fear of playing safe against Wu, because if they don't get it spot on, he will punish them. And he might be the player who pushes the game to become even more attacking, no holds barred, do or die mentality. It could be that the sport rewards the truly talented rather than the just reckless. It's an exciting time for snooker. And, well, the final point I'll make on that, it's kind of anti-snooker, just long putts. And I was like, but that's actually kind of the rules. It's if you can long putt, then, that's a huge advantage. If you can't knock in long putts, then relying on mistakes from your opponent, and at this level, you can't do that. But nothing safe on that table.
I see nothing wrong with anything about Wu Yiza. Even last year, and I'm not one, because I think that Jin Tong, I was pleased he's back in the game. Even last year, people were saying things like, there's a little bit of a, cloud over Jin Tong, which I didn't agree with. I've read all the reports of what happened with that. Even this year, you've got another Chinese player who was not involved in anything like that. He's the generation or a couple of years below. He was not. There's no stain against his name. Even if you think that is a thing, which I don't, he's just a young player coming through. And if it was a player from anywhere in the world, I'd love to see it. But I don't think you're going to see a 22-year-old with his level of composure very often, and his belief in what he's doing. We all know that he doesn't always play like that, because that's why he doesn't always win. But for 2.5 weeks, I think you need young legs now at that event. And I'm starting to think that, we are going to see more and more young players taking over from the 40-somethings and the 50-somethings now. And I think I'm hoping he'll be a great ambassador. I think he will be, and everything has to move forward. And I think the game's moving, in my opinion, in a right way. If John Higgins had won this title, he'd have said brilliantly, you've done remarkably well. But what would it have really said about the way the game is? Would it have said, that the class of 92 are incredible? Yes. But it also said that there's not that much in the way of competition. But he didn't win it. And we've had 4 consecutive first-time champions. So the game is moving forward.
Well said, well said. And that's what we all want. We all want to know that sport has a future, and Wu definitely will be a big part of that future. Before we wrap up here, Neil, just to take a quick moment, a quick look ahead to what's happening, not just on the Snooker Hall Podcast, but snooker in general. The Women's World Championship is coming up, and Q School also is coming up. Pro Tour cards will be on the line in the Mattioli Arena in Leicester. Careers will be changed and redefined. Hopefully, one of the successful players will join me on the Snooker Hall Podcast. We will find out who those players are over the coming days. A confirmed guest for the Snooker Hall Podcast is actually taking a short break from the sport after an intense run of events. But when he returns to duty, one of the most recognisable and respected voices in snooker, Nick Metcalf, will join me on the Snooker Hall Podcast to discuss a wide range of topics related to this sport, which we love so much. Well, Neal, thanks for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to speak again on the Snooker Hall Podcast. Hopefully this episode is just as popular as it was last year.
Thank you, Dan. Enjoyed it. My pleasure.
I'll speak to you soon, mate. Cheers, Neal. A big thank you once again to Neal Foulds for joining me on the Snooker Hall Podcast. During my time as host of this podcast, I've had the honour and the privilege to meet so many snooker personalities, and I can say that Neal is one of the most insightful and the most welcoming of all. To those who are new to the Snooker Hall Podcast, why not go back and check out some old episodes? There are plenty to choose from. Chats with players, coaches, referees, commentators, superfans, journalists. The ethos of this podcast is to cover snooker from all points of view. If you have memories of the recent World Championship or any other stories or opinions that you want to share, nothing is taboo on this show. Get in touch. The email address is contactus@thesnookerhall.com or get in touch on X, Blue Sky or Instagram. The handle for all of those platforms is The Snooker Hall. As I said earlier in the episode, snooker on the Pro Tour may be done for a little while, but snooker as a sport is absolutely not done. The cauldron of Q School will take place very soon in Leicester. It's always a fantastic watch. The drama is unrivaled. So much is on the line for those players, and I wish them all the best. Qualifying for the early competitions in the Pro Tour next season will take place in the middle of June. The Championship League ranking event version will also kick off in June. It's always interesting to see who kicks off their season in a positive way. Last year, of course, it was Stephen Maguire who brought home yet another ranking title for his collection. Maybe he can repeat the trick. For those fans who are going to take a little break from snooker until the really big events start up again, fair play. I understand completely. It's been an intense ride over the past 2 months. But no matter how you enjoy your snooker, it's refreshing to see that so many snooker fans can enjoy this sport in such a friendly, inclusive way. It is one of the reasons why I'm so proud to be a fan of this sport. There will be more episodes of this podcast coming up as the weeks pass. I hope you enjoy the sunshine, and until the next episode, take care.